Claude Opus 5 dropped last week. It's smarter than Claude Fable, according to Anthropic and to the benchmarks that are out there, for about 30% cheaper. I think you shouldn't use it. I also think that if you're in bed with Anthropic right now, you should be looking for the exits. Let's talk about it. Hey, hi, hello. My name's Ed. I do these in one take, and I drink delicious beverages on the internet. So last week, large language model Claude Opus 5 dropped from Anthropic, and with it came the usual stuff. We got the best thing since sliced bread talk again. It's almost as good as Fable. Now it is genuinely maybe better than Fable according to some benchmarks, but it's way cheaper. Here's where I'm at right now. While it is a good model, it's not enough to make Anthropic's offering viable, and unless you're encumbered with a pre-existing deal, you definitely shouldn't be moving to give them money because of this release. More and more it's becoming obvious that what matters is not just having a model, but having a stack of models. And you need to be able to provide, and I hate this word for it, I apologize, you need to provide intelligence at varying price points. If you are running a model in the $25 to $30 a megatoken range as your daily driver, I'm confident in saying that you're probably overspending. That goes for both GPT 5.6 Sol as well as for Opus 5. Does that mean these models are bad? No, far from it, but it does mean that other models are good enough, and good enough is the conversation we really need to be having these days. Right now, in both GLM 5.2 and GPT 5.6 Luna, which just had a price cut, we'll talk about that later, we have very affordable models that are pretty comfortably in that Opus 4.x range in terms of intelligence, and they are dirt cheap by comparison. With these inexpensive but good models, you can work all day on those generalized information forklift tasks, baseline coding, and then you can bring in the big guns for your reviews. You get a lot more done to what I think is a similar level of quality, and in my experience at least, you spend way less overall. So with that in mind, with the idea of having this stack of models, what does Anthropic give you here? Well, you've got Fable 5, but Opus 5 seems to pretty much obsolete Fable 5 for most people. I'm sure there's still some cases where it's better. It's bigger, and that tends to have an impact there. But like, outside of Opus, you've got Sonnet 5. And I kind of punched out of Anthropic around then, but nobody seems to like it in my circles, to the point where folks were finding, and when I was trying to use it at work, I agreed, that Opus 4.8, which is not a cheap model, was more efficient at a lot of tasks. And then you have Haiku 4.5, which was pretty cool when it came out last October. It is now so far behind everything else in that small model space that I feel bad putting graphs up with it because it bottoms out the scale. Meanwhile, OpenAI with Luna and Z.AI with GLM 5.2 are very comfortably providing what I think is good enough problem solving. And I do think that Opus 4.x is good enough for most tasks. Models will continue to improve, but I'm not necessarily sure that we care. There are definitely tasks where they'll benefit, but I think failures at that level on most normal person stuff are going to be as much about people's workflows as they are about anything else. But anyway, they're offering those for, again, dirt cheap. So we're looking at an inability at the bottom for Anthropic, we're looking at questions in the middle, and we're looking at something that is genuinely very good at the top. Or are we? Because, like, yes, it is clearly pretty good, but for my money, artificial analysis benchmarks are about as good as it gets, so I tend to go towards them. Every time I look at them, their numbers land about where my intuitions are. And Fable 5 and Opus 5 are 1 and 2 on their charts. Fable 5 also costs $275 per task completed, and Opus 5 costs $203. GPT 5.6 Sol costs $154, and Kimi K3, which is a model I don't love, it feels kind of benchmaxed, but it is very impressive that it exists at all. It is at about half the price of Sol. It's about 72 cents per task, while scoring only a little bit slower. Again, feels a little benchmaxed, but still, that says something. And if you're on a coding subscription, I think Moonshot's offering is just not very good, and I think the earlier Kimi models, which are used as the lower models in that stack, are not good enough to use regularly. So we'll drop those out, and at that point, you're pretty much talking about Anthropic and OpenAI. I do not think it is a contest when you compare them. Like, Haiku gets the doors blown off by Luna, and as of today, Luna just got an 80% price cut on the API, and they were talking a little bit about how they're going to be reducing the the token impact on your subscriptions. Obviously, those numbers are a lot harder to see, so most folks tend to use the API numbers. But Haiku is $5 per million output, and Luna is $180 per million, both at full 1 million context. If you are willing to take a shorter context, Luna is $120 per million. That's ridiculous, right? And Sonnet is iffy as a model, so I kind of want to compare on that too, but I don't use GPT 5.6 Terra for anything because Luna is so good. So I figure we table that. I don't have enough to intelligently opine on that. But Opus and Sol are pretty interchangeable in my experience, right? Sol was punching right alongside Fable 5, and so with Opus 5 out being more or less the same level of benchmark scoring, I'm going to predict that those look a lot alike. The one knock to consider, though, is that Codex offers smaller context window sizes than GPT does by the API. My guess, though I haven't seen it yet, because as of recording this, it hasn't rolled out, the short contexts that OpenAI is talking about for their models are going to be the same as the Codex subscription context sizes, which for 5.6 are 372,000 tokens in your context window, whereas the long context is 1 million. So Codex gives you much smaller context windows, but Codex does let you use those subscriptions in harnesses that use other models, which goes back to the first video on this channel where I described my workflow, right? GLM 5.2 has a 1 million token context. It runs the show. It sits at the top. It calls out to GPT Luna and GPT Sol for tasks where they're better. It also uses GLM subagents for some stuff too, like really wide-ranging tasks where having a really big context window is just more useful than being maybe incrementally smarter. I just don't think that Anthropic has it right now. And they could change it tomorrow with like a barn burner Haiku 5 and some price cuts, though I'm willing to be wrong, but I don't see that happening. More the price cuts than the model. They do know how to make a good model. But anyway, the bigger thing is that this is all subject to change, and you should hold every opinion very loosely right now. One opinion people are really bad at holding lightly is Anthropic's. A lot of people just think they have some kind of secret sauce. They don't. And right now they're far and away the worst value. And also, granted, I'm biased. I do run a coding harness, but they also saddle you with the worst tooling for being productive. People don't owe Anthropic anything despite their good marketing. And I think people should be using what gets them furthest. A lot of people, though, are currently on year-long lock-ins with model providers, and the ones who are on Anthropic are feeling left out. And they should, right? Like, the amounts that you're talking about for these year-long lock-ins are not great. I've seen everywhere from 4% to 11% discounts on Anthropic contracts with guaranteed spends. If you are on Anthropic right now, not having access to something like Luna, especially at the new price, which again just dropped today, even before that, it was going to eat your margins in days. This is going to eat your margins in hours. That discount you're giving right back in just not having adequate models at every level of the stack. I think that most companies really benefit today from paying rack rates, right? Like, sure, they'll give you a discount if you lock in. Is that discount going to be something that you hand back immediately? My guess is that it is, and that doesn't just go for Anthropic, though Anthropic is definitely on the bottom of the wheel right now. That goes for anybody, right? OpenAI may not be the top dog in 6 months, and you may be benefiting from Anthropic, Claude 5.4 or whatever, having a really, really good small model. And while I do think we are at that good enough point where, 5.6 Luna will still be good in 6 months if they don't have another one, and I'm sure they will. If they add new models like I changed my socks. But like, if you want the best, then this is going to be a real problem for you. It also goes for subscriptions, right? Like some of these, you can get a year-long lower-end subscription from Anthropic. Not a good idea. They don't offer it for the max level stuff, and I don't think ChatGPT Pro does either, but I could be wrong about that. Either way, like, things change too fast. We are not at a point where it is stable to be going ahead and locking in with anybody, unless you're using somebody like AWS and then you're using Bedrock and you could switch models between them, right? Like, especially as more OpenAI models end up on Bedrock, that's going to end up being a more interesting option. And similar, I'm sure, for the other cloud providers, but I have an AWS brain for my sins. Anyway, that's all for today. I am new to this whole YouTube thing. We're gonna have some fun here. Subscribe button's down there somewhere. Share with your Claude loving friends. You know how to engage with content. I don't have to tell you that. Anyway, catch you later.